Oh, welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Breath Club's monthly live broadcast. This is where I answer questions from the Patreon Club. This is, hey, check it out. For just $5 a month, you can get access to a complete catalog of breathwork sessions. If you don't know who I am, I'm Jesse Coomer. I'm the author of multiple books. One of the most popular books in breathwork is A Practical Guide to Breathwork, and that was my first book on the topic back in 2020. My follow-up came a couple years later with The Language of Breath, and I am the founder of The Language of Breath and the breathwork tactics program for first responders. So it's something that I do for a living. It's something that I absolutely love, and I'm excited to be sharing with you some answers to questions from members of the Breath Club on Patreon. So after this Q&A session, actually, I've got some amazing questions. This is actually probably one of my favorite list of questions. So we got some really cool questions that I'm going to be answering today. If you're not familiar with the Breath Club, the starting tier is only $5 per month. That's just buying me a cup of coffee. You get access to the full catalog of over 100 sessions. This is a club that's been going since 2020 when I had this as a professional breath worker. It was awful during 2020. I had to close down all my workshops and retreats. So we started the Breath Club, and it has been going strong ever since. It's got amazing people from around the world, and we get together every month for a Zoom session where we do live breathwork. So we do that after the Q&A. So we tickle all of our curiosity bones, and then we get into a deep, beautiful breathwork session. Today's breathwork session is going to be a combination of internal awareness and bliss. And but hey, if you haven't joined, consider joining. If not, just stick around, hang out, and let me know you're here. Let me know where you're coming from, and I'm excited to share these answers to questions. The first question of the month comes from Brian. Brian is suffering from a terrible cold, he says. And actually, I think a lot of people are getting sick. So I've talked to actually a lot of my clients, and a lot of my colleagues have said, hey, I got this terrible cold. So hey, it's rough whenever you're into breath work and your respiratory system is under fire. You've got inflammation, you've got snot, your everything is all plugged up. Now, Brian is asking about breath work. Now, his question is more concerned with maybe the hyperventilative style of breath work. And so he says, whenever I have a cold, I cannot breathe through my nose. And if you're not familiar with this, my advice, even in breath work that's very deep, psychedelic breath work, is to always breathe through your nose in and out, not just in, your nose and out through your mouth. And I'll talk about that some other time, but he knows this. My recommendation is in and out through your nose for multiple reasons. But he's saying, hey, what do I do? What do I do when I cannot breathe in and out through the nose and I want to do breath work? So let's get into this question. First of all, there's a few things you can do to help to open up your sinuses. The Buteyko sinus clearing method is one that a lot of people use and have a lot of success with. It really depends on the degree of your cold, because the Buteyko nasal clearing or technique, it's really only in my use, it's valuable in that it can open you up. But if you're really, really sick, it's kind of difficult. So let's cover how to do that real quick. So if you want to try this is the Buteyko nasal clearing technique. What you're going to do is hold your breath on neutral. So you're not taking a deep breath in. You're not emptying your lungs all the way out. You're just holding your breath. And what you're going to do is you're going to wait until you feel a strong urge to breathe. And you're just going to, as that urge continue, as it comes, you're going to look all the way up, and you're going to look all the way down. You're going to look all the way up. You're going to look all the way down. You're going to look all the way up. You're going to keep doing that until you just cannot hold your breath anymore. And when that happens, you're going to take a slow inhale through your nose. And in many cases, it opens up your sinuses. Now, that is all well and good. and it's great, especially if you have sort of stuffed up sinuses. Like, for instance, I am in the Midwest. We are having some of the coldest weather we've had in like a decade or so. So that means the heaters are running all the time, and that means that the air is very dry. That can cause a lot of inflammation in your sinuses, and so it's great for those times. Okay, but if you're really, really sick, you can repeat it over and over again, but it may not really clear you out. Okay, I'm just going to be completely honest. These in the breathwork world, there's so much hype. Actually, we're going to talk a little bit about. Well, we're going to talk a lot about the hype. And the thing is, breathwork is so amazing. There really shouldn't be hype, right? It's so good that you shouldn't have to have hype, but people feel like they need to have the hype so that they can get the clients and all this other stuff. And you've seen it in the exercise world. Exercise is like the best. Exercise does so many things, but you still see, hey, lose belly fat fast if you do this workout routine, on these on magazine covers and things like that. So it's one of those things that it permeated into breath work. So you get a lot of crazy out there claims, or you get some hype. Now, I'm not saying that Buteyko himself, so Konstantin Buteyko, he hasn't been with us for probably I don't know how long ago he passed away, but he was during the early 1900s. He was really, I guess, late 1900s as well. So it's one of those things where I don't know if there's an enormous amount of hype around his technique, but the reality is that you'll probably need other things. Another thing you can do to help clear those sinuses, of course, is to do sinus irrigation. So sometimes we call those neti pots, and those are really helpful sometimes as well. Here's the thing, though. Okay, so there's all the things you can do to get it so that you can do hyperventilative breath work again, if that's the thing that you want to do. But I will tell you this, that during the times when you're sick, I wouldn't recommend superventilation or hyperventilation, however you want to say it. So the circular breath where we get those blissful altered states. And a lot of times I get people, and I don't know, Brian didn't mention this in his question, but a lot of times I get people who are saying, well, I want to do that hyperventilative stuff because I've heard it's really good for your immune system. I've heard that, for instance, Wim Hof method is, it makes it so you can boost your immune system and kill the viruses and all those other things. And to my knowledge, there's no scientific evidence to say that superventilation or hyperventilating is going to help you get over a cold faster or make it so that, your immune system is significantly boosted. And so it's one of those things. The thing that does help when you're sick is rest. The thing that does help is bringing your nervous system into a state where you can recover, right? So in those cases, I would highly recommend using coherence breathing. So heart resonance frequency breathing, right? So balanced breathing, just relaxing, okay? So that you can turn on all the aspects of your nervous system that help you to recover and to become more healthy. So superventilation has its purposes. I was in the camp. I used to think it did all these other things. Most of it's hype. And so when it comes down to it, yes, we do boost our immune system in some capacity because we are no longer in this chronically stressed out state. So there's a lot of claims that are making those connections. For instance, all these studies that talk about that. But the reality is it's different from, hey, I've caught cold and I'm trying to do this technique to make the cold go away. There's no research that says that if you have a cold, you should do hyperventilation and that's going to make the cold go away faster. Okay. The thing that makes your nervous system help you, and your immune system is part of your nervous system, is to get out of its way and let it do its thing. It knows what it needs to do. It's doing its best for you. And the best thing you can do is find yourself in as restful of a state as possible. I know I'm not the kind of person myself who likes to just stop doing things. I like to be active. I like to get things done. I get that. But Brian, when it comes to, hey, I can't breathe through my nose, so how do I do breath work? I'm not going to say, well, just breathe through your mouth. Okay, I'm going to say, maybe listen to this body of yours that's trying to say, hey, we need to slow down. Okay, don't force some kind of sympathetic reaction. Don't force something whenever it's literally saying, hey, you can't breathe through your nose. Well, maybe you should be relaxed to a point where you don't have to breathe heavy. All right. So my best advice to you, do everything that makes you feel relaxed. There's all kinds of sessions in the Breath Club right now that would help that. We have a whole collection. So just pop over into the Breath Club. There's a huge collection of just calming, relaxing things. And I hope you feel better soon, Brian. All right, Aja. Next question. And by the way, if you're just joining us, this is the Q&A. This is the monthly Q&A for the Breath Club here on YouTube. The Breath Club is my Patreon club. This is where you can get access to all of my materials, Jesse Coomer, all my my guided breathwork sessions. There's over 100 breathwork sessions, and every month we get together. And then we get together for a guided Zoom call. So that actually that's next. So if you haven't joined, now's a great time to join. And we're going to get into the breathwork session after the Q&A at the next hour. Okay. So having said that, let's get to the next question from Aja. Hey, and by the way, if you're watching, let me know where you're coming from. Say hello. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all those other things. All right. So Aja is asking a very simple question. She just asked, what is the best breath work for sleep? And hey, guess what? And Brian, if you're listening, let's talk, okay? Because Brian, if you're sick, you need to sleep, you need to recover, you need to get out of your own way. So listen to Aja's question. What's the best breath work for sleep? When it comes to sleep is one of these things where it is the foundation of our health. It is so important. It's something that is essential. Hey there, Eric. Nice to see you here. Oh no. I hope you can make it to the Zoom. If not, it'll be recorded and we'll miss you. But all right. So, but Aja is talking about what's the best breath work for sleep. And Eric, hey, you're in the breath club. If you have a question, feel free to pop it in there. I'll add that to our mix today. So Aja is asking about the sleep thing. So here's the thing. When it comes to sleep, there are so many different permutations of what helps us to sleep well and what prevents us from getting a good night's sleep. One of those is our physiological state when we're trying to initially go to sleep. So much of the time we go, and then we expect to, I guess, lie down and put our heads on a pillow, and then suddenly it magically makes us go to sleep. Hey, Dana, nice to see you. So, it's rare that you're going to just go, and then walk up to your bed, lay down on it, fall asleep immediately, and get 8 hours straight. So what we do is there's a couple things. One is you can prime your system. So you can prime your nervous system to put you into a better state so that you can get that sleep that you need. The other thing is, why is it that you're not getting great sleep? There's two big reasons why my clients typically are not sleeping well. One is physiological. So one is coming from the physiology. Okay. And that can be a lot of things. But the other one is that they're thinking about something and they're ruminating about it. Okay. So a lot of people will say, I can't get my brain to shut off. Now, here's a thing that happens when it comes to our brains. What'll often happen is we will have a case of, okay, I've been going all day. I've been very busy. I've occupied my conscious form. And then we lie down and all of the things that we haven't thought of lately, all of the things that maybe we haven't thought about it in a while. Those things are the things that start to percolate and they start to come up and we're like, hey, this is no fun, but I can't stop thinking about it. Okay. And as a result, I miss out on sleep. So there's so many different reasons why a person can have poor sleep. So this is the reason Aja, I wanted to answer your question just by starting in this way is just to acknowledge that I'm not going to give, the one simple trick to a perfect night's sleep because there are a lot of different reasons why a person may have sleep problems or struggle with sleep. I mean, it can be something as mundane as, maybe you're having a little caffeine a little too late in the day, which I know that I have been guilty of doing. And I know a lot of people do as well. So there's a lot of things that come into play. If you're looking for a breathwork technique for this, it really will depend on the reason why you're struggling to sleep. But here are some tips that I'd like to give you, Aja, to give you maybe some guidance on how to get some better sleep. And um, and I hope these help, and maybe they'll help some other people who are watching today. And if, of course, if this is helpful for you, please let me know in the comments or the likes and whatever's. So, having said that, one of the things, Aja, that you'll want to do is think about your state before it's time to go to bed. And I know this is difficult. Life gets busy. I have, I'm married. I have a child. I run this business. I've got clients, and they're scattered around the world. So odd times I'm working. My wife works. There's a snowstorm coming, whatever, right? There's all sorts of things going on in life. And so I get that we can't always just say, well, now I'm going to stop worrying about all of the problems in the world. And now I'm going to just focus on my sleep. But having said that, we want to do our best, right? We want to do our best to at least become aware of the fact within a certain number of hours, I am going to go to sleep. And I would recommend those number of hours to be about 3. So 3 hours before you go to bed. Now, no, I'm not saying 3 hours before it's bedtime. It's time to get in your jammies and, all those things. I'm saying that it's important to check in with your state, not just once, but multiple times throughout the day. But especially when we're talking about sleep, check in with your state early. Okay. And to do that, you need to develop some awareness. In the language of breath, we have the awareness exercise. You can go into, let's see, it doesn't, I took what, so I took one of my books to the event that I did this past weekend. So it's usually on the shelf right here. Let's see, do I have one? I don't have one. Anyway, it's in the language of breath, and it's called the awareness exercise. You can find also there's the awareness exercise guided practice in Patreon. So if you go to our collections, you can find the awareness exercise there. So you've got a guided awareness exercise. Ultimately, you want to perform that as many times throughout the day to check in on your state. Don't expect yourself to just magically know what your state is. It takes some intention. It takes doing it on purpose. But if you do this on purpose and you say, okay, what is my state? How am I feeling? You can say, okay, because I know I'm up here on the stress scale, I know that I need to do some mitigations to help throttle me down. What I see so often is a person trying to say, okay, I'm all the way up here. I'm going to stay at 10 out of 10 on stress all the way until maybe just 10 minutes before it's time to go to sleep. And then I'm going to do this magical breathing technique. And then it's going to take me from a 10 down to a 1, and I'm going to be able to go to sleep. And let me just say, you deserve a better strategy than that. So 3 hours before bed, check in. You can do this if you haven't really developed a great sense of internal awareness. That's a start. So look up the awareness exercise in my book, or look up the awareness exercise in the language of breath online course, or in the breath club. There's a lot of different ways you can find it. Look that up. Start practicing it. Okay. Now, I will say that a lot of people don't like to practice awareness, and this is for a lot of different reasons. But Aja, if you're struggling with sleep, awareness is going to be key. And I always say awareness is the foundation of all positive change, and it's true. All right. So if you're looking to change your sleep patterns, it really does take awareness. And ideally 3 hours before you want to go to sleep, you're becoming aware of your state, and you're trying to slowly but surely throttle yourself down. Now, at 3 hours till, right? If you're at a 10, do what you can to get yourself working down to as low of a number as possible. Yes, you might still have phone calls to do. You might still have to parent. You might still have all these other responsibilities, but we want to try to down regulate if we can. So great techniques for that is just, 5-5 breathing. So coming into balance, coherence, 4-7-8 breathing, some of the classics. Box breathing is probably the most overlooked and one of the most powerful breathing techniques to coming back into a harmonious inner state. So literally just doing any of those techniques for a minute or two is going to help you to throttle that nervous system so that by a half hour before bed, you're in a real pattern where you can really make real change. You're not trying to go from 10 to 1. Maybe you're at 6 coming down to 1. And from there, you can go into the Breath Club. And Aja, you're one of our premium tier members. And you can find all of the guided sleep sessions. One of them that I really, really recommend, and this is for two reasons, but one of them is the Language of Breath sleep method. Now, what this does, the sleep method it combines a breathing cadence with guided interoceptive awareness. And there's a lot of interesting science on why these two things blend so well together and why they put you into a better state for sleep. But I will just suffice to say, for sake of time, that is a really powerful session if you're looking to get a good night's sleep. Now, having said that, Aja, you didn't give me a lot of details. You just asked me this question. So I appreciate it. And you can always send me a follow-up question in the Patreon club. But one of the things I often will also hear from a lot of my clients is, and Aja, this may be you, is that, okay, I can get to sleep really well when I first go to sleep, but then I wake up in the middle of the night and it's like 3 a.m. and I can't go back to sleep and blah, blah, blah. Right. So I understand that on a personal level. That's something I have struggled with my whole life. And most of my clients struggle with that as well. So I want you to know that you're not broken. You're not alone. This is something that happens to a lot of people. And the good news is it's something that we can help you with. So the Language of Breath sleep method is perfect for that time. And you don't have to go to Patreon and listen to the session if you don't want to. You can just remember receptive awareness with my breath. And you can, after you do the Language of Breath sleep method once or twice through the guided session, you'll remember how to practice it anyway. So what you're going to do is practice that, especially during those times. Now, of course, most people are going to say, well, one thing that also seems to help me is 4-7-8 breathing. And it is true. 4-7-8 breathing is probably the most recommended breathing technique for falling back to sleep in the middle of the night. And I'd have no argument against that. It does seem to work for a lot of people. The thing is, I've been doing this for a decade professionally. And I will say, if you're one of the people that it doesn't seem to work very well for, you can try something else. So box breathing, I know people are like, oh, box breathing, the boring one, the one that, it's so funny because there's usually box breathing it's the first one a person hears of, and it's the first one they want to say, I'm never going to do it again. If you go on the Breathwork channel here, you can find a tutorial I did on box breathing. Most people are doing box breathing incorrectly. Most people don't get the benefits out of box breathing that they could because they're doing it incorrectly. So if you go on the channel and let's see, it came out a couple weeks ago. It was during our 5-day challenge, which you can join. Actually, there's a link there that'll send you all the stuff, the entire 5-day challenge all at once. But if you go back on the channel, there's a tutorial on how to do box breathing and do it correctly. And then I guide you through it in that video. I would recommend that to give you an idea of how to use box breathing. Here's the thing about box breathing and why I like it so much for sleep. One of the things that it does, it beats counting sheep. Yes, you're doing a lot of counting, but this is actually the perfect time to do it. Okay. Box breathing is a monotonous, boring technique that works. It improves your heart rate variability. It improves your overall feeling of calm and safety. And those are all things you want if you're struggling to go to sleep or get back to sleep. So box breathing is another fantastic one. Now, if you work with me or you work with one of my coaches in the Language of Breath, so if you're looking for a coach, and you could always reach out to me, but we also have coaches. If you go to languageofbreathcollective.com, they're going to guide you through sessions that are a little bit more advanced, that take some skill to really master, rather than just a technique that I can give you on a Q&A like this. They're going to guide you through how we can really, really master that interoceptive awareness and how we can leverage it to get the best overall night's sleep. So, Aja, I want to thank you for that question. I think a lot of people struggle with sleep. So, thank you for that question. I hope that helped a lot of people. Okay, last one. I only had 3 questions this month. That's okay. All right, this last one may take me a while to answer. So Nicole reached out and she said, I've heard a lot of your stories about how the breathwork world is the Wild West. And she basically wants to hear my craziest story, the things I've seen. And so just some context on that. So we are living in a huge explosion of breath work, and breath work itself is the fastest growing health modality. And because of that, we are seeing the highest amount right now of garbage that you've ever. It's so hard to believe how bad things have gotten when it comes to people. So there's this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's where a person who doesn't really have a lot of competence believes they do. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is basically this phenomenon where a person who there's an inverse relationship between competence and confidence, right? So the less competent, the more confident we seem to be, sadly enough. And the more competent, right? The more you've learned, the more you know, the less confident you are. And that's because you've been shown that's just, if you think about it, if you've ever gotten good at anything, you realize there's probably other things that you didn't know. But what happens to the human brain is that whenever we think we know it all, because how much more could there be, that's whenever we're insanely confident, even though our competence level is in the toilet. And that's what I see so much of in the breathwork world. I will see so many just really unsafe practices, and I will see people who have no sense of, what they're working with. And here's the thing about breathwork that has always blown my mind. Even when I was going through the Dunning-Kruger effect times of high confidence, even though my competence was pretty low, I've always been blown away that, okay, we can attribute these amazing results to something, and then we somehow expect it to not have any possible side effects. We expect it's just so simple and anybody can teach anybody, and you can spread it and all these other things. And so what we see now, somebody will read like James Nestor's book and then think, okay, I'll just go out there and I'm a breath worker. Or they'll go out and they'll do like a weekend retreat, or they'll do some kind of like a little online certification, or they'll watch these, right? They'll watch, this is not me teaching you how to be a breath coach. Like so I teach a school, and we have a faculty of we have a neuroscientist, we have a physical therapist, we have a respiratory therapist. Like, we take it really seriously because it's serious. And so you see a lot of people that sort of just like, everybody thinks they're a breath worker these days. And I think these are good people. Honestly, I don't think these people are like, I'm going to go out and cause harm. I'm going to go out and, misuse these things or be unethical. But I do think that it's a shame, because we see a lot. A lot of my clients have come to me after they've gone through a lot of these breathwork sessions, and they have terrible experiences, or they have really bad opinions on what breathwork is. So having said that, the story that I will tell, Nicole, and I am going to protect the identity of this breath leader, because you know who this person is. So I was at this, I was working at a retreat. It wasn't my retreat. It was someone else's retreat. Big name in the world of breathwork. And one of the things you always do when you are a responsible breath worker is you always tell people about what they're about to do. So you have to go through, this is what to expect. This is what you're about to do. This is what we're going to be doing. Let's maybe do a few practice techniques. Let's practice the techniques we're going to be using. These are possible things that could happen during the session. If you feel any of these feelings, I want you to stop. Here are some alternatives that you can do instead of the thing we're about to do. Like, there is a lot that happens or should happen before a session to honor a person's journey, to keep them feeling safe, and to be an ethical breath worker. I was working for this one breathwork star, and we were doing this retreat. It was the first day of the retreat, and this person wanted to make it really theatrical, wanted to make it really like special. And I get that. I totally get that. You know, there's a certain degree of experience that you want to give your clients or your attendees at this case. But here's what happened. It was the very first day. We hadn't done any talks. We hadn't done any breath work. We hadn't done any kind of safety talks or descriptions of what was about to happen. It was not my retreat. I was just assisting this bigger breath worker at the time. And hey, Rusty, good to see you here. Rusty Games, MC. Anyway, I'm talking about the craziest or the worst breathwork story that I've ever seen. So, but here's the thing. I was working at someone's retreat who had done a lot of research, who actually is well respected in the field of breathwork, but wanted to have this theatrical introduction to an experience. And so what happened is everybody was invited in the room. There was nothing said on purpose. This was part of the plan. And they said, okay, so lie down. We're going to begin. And they didn't even say, you know, the people that I was not guiding the session. I was there I had other sessions during the week that I was going to lead. I was just there sort of observing. And yeah, it's not going somewhere good, Rusty. I was there observing. I was there sort of as support. I was one of the featured breath workers that week. So I was there to sort of support if there was any, anyone who needed support. And so I was uncomfortable with this whole thing, right? But it wasn't my gig. I did speak up later, but it was one of those things where, you kind of, you're like, okay, this is your show. What are you going to do? And so they invited everybody in and they just said, let's go ahead and begin. And then there was music. Everyone started doing circular breathing and squeezes and all these things that were sort of like a lot of people would consider it to be like hyperventilative breath work with squeezes, which is really intense. And they didn't give any kind of safety message at the beginning. At some point, I realized that one of the practitioners was pregnant doing this, which is a big no-no. That should never happen. And it was for lack of a better word, it was a shit show. And there were people having outward expressions and screaming and things like that. And afterwards, so after the week, a lot of people reached out to me. I had spoken to some people and they were like, what was that? You know, why did they do that? You know? And so it was one of those things where I just happened to be a person who was featured. I wasn't actually part of that session. I was going to be part of the session later on, or a different session later on in the week. And it just sort of set the tone that safety doesn't matter, or that it's more about experience or entertainment or effect or whatever, than it is about having a safe and effective practice. And it's too bad because you'll see that it's not just the weekend cowboy, not just the people who, hey, I'm super into yoga. I read a book. I took an online course. Now I'm going to go out there and lead other people because I don't know what I don't know. Even there are some people out there that should know better, but still, because they want to create this experience, they don't do any talk. They don't have any talk of contraindications, possible side effects, possible things that may come up, or options for clients who have things come up and then they don't know what to do, right? And so you have these big groups and there's blaring music and people, there's no preamble, there's no talk at the beginning about here's what we're going to do. It's just like, okay, let's begin breathing. So that was the craziest. That was the worst, Nicole. I appreciate your question. It's no fun to talk about that. Actually, I prefer talking about the nicer things, but it is important to talk about it. It is something that I do see more and more, like on YouTube and on media, and I see a lot of people being pushed way too hard and having no runway, no titration, no respect for their window of tolerance. And so, it's something that I'm working on some projects to hopefully combat some of that because I think a lot of people, I myself, I got into breath work because I learned a lot of techniques like a lot of people did, but then I got into the sort of the hyperventilative stuff and I really fell in love with it. And then I had some amazing experiences and things like that. And, I just got curious and I went around talking to all the different people. But one thing I don't see enough of is a focus on safety. And here's the funny thing. Because people think that if I talk about it beforehand, I'm going to ruin the experience. It's not that. So if you're one of the wannabe breath workers, if you're one of the breath workers that went to a retreat and decided, hey, how hard can it be? I'm going to go, or you went to maybe it was a workshop of me. I've had people come to my workshops and my retreats, and then I find out later on, now they're leading a workshop. And I'm like, interesting. And then they cite me as the person they learned from. And I'm like, you went to a workshop. Like a workshop teaches you this much, and it's not teaching you how to guide others. It's teaching you how to do the thing, right? You went to a retreat with me. Fantastic. That's awesome. I'm glad it inspired you. If you want to go further, there is a reason why you want to learn from someone who focuses on ethics and focuses on safety. And it's not because you're trying to keep people from having amazing experiences. Actually, the reality is when you understand how all of it works and you actually have an emphasis on safety, people have a better experience. And it's so hard whenever I see people out there focusing on let's make people scream and cry, and they lose touch with the fact that that's literally not what it's about. Right? They act as if that's the point. Look at how many people were screaming and crying at my event. I'll see it on Instagram all the time. And it's disgusting because integration is what we're looking for. And oftentimes it's very boring to look at from the outside. Most of the time, it's going to make a terrible Instagram reel because nothing is happening outside. It's all happening inside. But you have to teach a person and you have to guide a person correctly in order for that to be able to happen. Anyway, Nicole, thank you so much for that question. I don't want to go on and on about, sometimes I feel like I'm the grumpy old man of breath work, and I don't want to be that. I do see problems in breath work, especially because it's growing so much. And because what happens is when there's a market, like when people say, okay, I can make some money, then there's going to be more people who say, I will give you exactly what you're looking for if you give me money, right? So you'll see more people do the thing in fitness. It was lose inches on your tummy by doing this workout, which is ridiculous. You can't focus on specific parts of the body to lose fat from. Same thing you're seeing in breath work today. You're saying, oh, you'll get this result, that result. And so they're making these big promises, and there's a lot of shady things going on. So this channel, the Breathwork channel, is one of our goals is to bring sanity to it and to be a welcoming place, a safe place to be a beginner or someone who has been in it for a long time. If you want to continue to progress, the Breathwork club. So the Breath Club on Patreon, it's another place for people who are looking for ethical breath work and guidance too. So Rusty says, I have to go, but I'll catch up later, Jesse. Hoping to come to more of these. Yeah, Rusty, make it. I hope you can make it to these. These are great. These are a lot of fun. Okay, so those were some questions from the Breath Club. We've got a live breathwork session coming up at the next hour that looks like 20 minutes from now. If you haven't joined the Breath Club, basically what it is, it's on Patreon. It's $5 to join at the base level, $5 a month. And then you get access to all of my catalog of breathwork sessions, ad-free. And that's everything from 5-minute sessions, 2-minute sessions, all the way to hour-long sessions, for every different kind of outcome you're looking for, using science-based ethical breath sessions that you can get the most out of. So that is one thing we do. We also do this Q&A every month. We also have a live breathwork session, and I'm going to go prepare for that. If you'd like to join us, it's only $5 to join. You can take a look at I put the website down in the description, but if you just go to patreon.com and you search for Jesse Coomer, you will find me. You will find my Patreon club, and I can't wait to meet you. So thanks so much for being here for today's live session. I will see you at the breathwork session on Zoom in just 20 minutes.